that's just an inaccurate. Yeah, maybe Lizzie wants to speak to it, but that I don't know. There's nothing like 66 million in the state of Illinois. We only have 13 million people. So no, that's just false.
It's Governor J.B. Pritzker yesterday answering a question from the Center Square's Jim Talamonte about the report we put out earlier this week concerning the increase of Medicaid dollars for children without Social Security numbers. You can find that headline at thecentersquare.com from earlier this week. FOIA reveals 725% increase in Medicaid for Illinois children without Social Security numbers. And we talked with Bailey Templeton for this story, and ultimately what it shows is her FOIA request she received back after working on these questions for a year. She found that in 1 year, there was about $8 million spent in 2021 for about 450 children. But that number in 2025 jumped up to $66 million to care for 1,085 children. Templeton told us earlier this week about what exactly these costs being incurred by taxpayers are for.
Sure. I think it's a wide spectrum of things that could be happening here, and it wouldn't be right for me to say exactly what's happening, but I could say it raises questions about what would be called medical trafficking, where things are conducted onto children when they're too young to be able to consent to these things happening. I can't prove what's happening to these children, but there are reasons that the Nuremberg Code was written the way that it was, and children can't consent to medical procedures. And if they don't have anybody watching out for what's best for them, you never know what could be happening to them. And yes, it is a really dark side, but there are really dark things happening in this country and across the world, and we are all aware of that. And it's very important to bring light to the dark because they can't coexist. So if we continue to shine a light on things that could be harming children, I have hopes that we could solve this and protect more children, whether they are registered Social Security number holders or not. I want to make sure these children are safe. And
when I asked her if this was just to give more fuel to the fire of those wanting to go after non-citizens in the country, Templeton said no, it's because children without Social Security numbers are the most vulnerable, and they need to have transparency on what's happening to them, especially if they can't speak for themselves. So Templeton raising these issues, and seemingly the data that she got from the Pritzker administration shows that 725% increase in the number of dollars going out over the span of 5 years. In 2020, 8 million. In 2025, 66 million. This is what Governor J.B. Pritzker said when the Center Square's Jim Talamonte was in front of him yesterday, asking him, can you explain the 725% increase in Medicaid payment for the cost of $66 million is what ultimately the data shows. And here's Pritzker reacting, seeming to not understand the question.
I know that's just an inaccurate. Maybe Lizzie wants to speak to it, but that I don't know. There's nothing like 66 million in the state of Illinois. We only have 13 million people. So no, that's just false.
It wasn't a question of 66 million people. It was $66 million. And you can see he dismissed the question and then just went off to another question. Again, we reached out to the departments that has these numbers. They did not respond to multiple attempts to get a response, and the governor not really addressing the question either. So the questions still remain, and maybe the governor just needs to be posed the question a little bit more directly. And we'll see if that can happen sometime when he has another news conference. He doesn't have one scheduled today, but ultimately Templeton, who's running for a seat in the state house, Republican primary for the 94th Illinois House district, she says that ultimately Pritzker needs to go because all of this lands on his lap.
I think the taxpayers deserve answers 100%. We are paying for everything that is coming forth through this overpayment system. That's coming from your money that should be going to you and your family directly. I think that state agencies have way too much power and that they have way too little oversight. And this really does fall on the lap of Pritzker. Once again, he is allowing his state agencies to break the law, to break constitutional rights, and to do things that are really obscene and unheard of. And Pritzker's got to go. It's just the bottom line to it. He's got to go. He does not have the morals that it takes to be a governor, to follow the laws and to keep our children here protected.
Now, we do have a gubernatorial election that is happening in November. Pritzker running for a third consecutive term. You've got several Republican candidates on the primary ballot in March that are going up against each other. Darren Bailey, Ted Dabrowski, James Mendrick, Rick Heidner. People will line up to talk to here. Maybe next week we can line those up. But ultimately, again, you've got the governor running. And is this an issue that's going to come up and hit him? We'll see. Another thing, the governor yesterday holding a news conference, and you can find out what exactly that news conference was all about at thecentersquare.com in the Illinois page. If you check that out, you'll see Jim Talamonte's reporting on what the governor was doing yesterday. And he was ultimately expanding access and funding for abortion, but Republicans pushing back about that funding. So what ultimately the governor did, joined abortion advocacy groups in Chicago Wednesday to announce a new fund connecting donor support with organizations protecting and expanding reproductive health care access. But you have State Representative Noreen Hammond saying that Illinois should not use Medicaid dollars to provide abortions. Clearly a lot more debate about that, but Republicans in the minority, and reproductive health care is a big political issue for Democrats. But the governor also being asked about ICE, and he says that ICE is in need of reform. He also discussed how he says that ICE diminishes people's rights here in Illinois.
Who knows
and beyond.
what Tom Homan is now going to be. He was bad from the start. They seem to have moved him away because he seems to have accepted bribes. And now they're moving him back in because that's acceptable in this administration, apparently. So we'll see what happens. But I can tell you that the procedures, the attitude, the methodology, indeed all of what Trump has built at ICE and CBP needs to be thrown out and revamped. And we need to have people who are actually professionally prepared to do law enforcement, and instead of taking away people's constitutional rights. The First, the Fourth, the Fifth, the 10th Amendments, these are all under attack just by ICE and CBP.
Now, a lot of you watching are going to be quick to say, well, what about the Second Amendment rights that Governor J.B. Pritzker has torn apart with the Protect Illinois Communities Act, the ban on semi-automatic firearms and magazines over certain capacities and the registration. But I mean, regardless, the governor talking about rights of free speech, free assembly, warrantless, you're free from having to go through, warrantless searches and such. So he's laying out all those rights as paramount. But again, I'm sure a lot of you watching will just reflect on, now we're at year 3 of the Protect Illinois Communities Act being in place while the judiciary continues to sit on the case before it can be pushed up to the U.S. Supreme Court, which has already indicated they want to take it. But anyways, I digress from the issue of Pritzker talking about ICE. He goes on to say that ICE is costing taxpayers a lot of money.
They're now going to spend a whole bunch of money building up what can only be described as a secret police force at ICE, where they're going to multiply by 7 the amount of money that will go into ICE. That is what now is being debated at the U.S. Senate.
Now, what's going to happen in the U.S. Senate? Well, you got Democrats who are wanting to essentially block that funding for ICE. And that could lead to partial government shutdown after we just had a 40-plus day full government shutdown. So we're going to see a partial government shutdown over the funding for immigration customs enforcement. That's a great question. The governor was asked about something else yesterday as well, unrelated to the news conference he held about access to abortions and dollars being used for that. He talked about, he was asked about the National School Choice Credit Tax Credit Program and whether or not Illinois is going to join that. A lot of other states are joining that. And you've got some reports from various organizations highlighting these things, including from Ballotpedia, of the different types of states that are going on to this U.S. school choice tax credits program. And you can see a map here of just some of the states that have opted in, that have formally opted in and have taken official action to opt in. A governor has made the call to opt in, and these are all ways that you could opt into that National School Choice Scholarship Program. Now, this is different than the Invest in Kids program that Illinois had for several years, I think from 2018 to 2023, or was it 2024 at the end of 2024? Either way, the program was allowed to expire despite groups, bipartisan groups saying, hey, we need this program. It's helping out kids get out of failing public schools. And it gives a tax credit to those private tax dollars that are being put into school granting, scholarship granting organizations. So these SGOs would take the dollars, people would write off that on their Illinois taxes, and they'd get a tax credit for it. But they let the program end. All right, even though thousands of families were helped with it and schools were thriving because of it, private schools, school choice was thriving in Illinois. It ended because teacher unions pushed back and said it's taking tax dollars away from public schools, even though these were private dollars going into a fund. So Pritzker asked about the national program. That's part of that one big beautiful bill that President Donald Trump signed July 4th in 2025. It creates this school choice scholarship program nationwide. Now, it's not as generous as the Illinois Invest in Kids program, which I believe was like $10,000 or something, or it was like a certain percentage. It's been so long since it's been in place and we reported on it. It's escaping my mind. You got a healthy tax credit for it up to a certain cap. I mean, it was like millions of dollars, but the national program, not as generous. I think it's like $1,000 tax credit you can get, but states have to opt into the program to be able to take part in it. Pritzker was asked about that yesterday. And here's what he had to say about the possibility of a school choice scholarship national program, Illinois joining.
Nothing's changed. We have not seen any rules that have been put out. Remember, the federal government hasn't put any rules around this program. Those rules, when they're issued, we'll be able to evaluate whether that's good for the state of Illinois and the people of Illinois or not. But until we have that, right, just on its face, the question is this just a repeat of trying to take money out of public schools and move it into private schools, which is what the Trump administration, generally speaking, has been in favor of? Or is this something that could be useful? But we just don't know because there are no rules around it right now. We await that. It was supposed to come out, as far as I understood, those rules were supposed to come out before the end of the year. They still aren't out. So we'll take a look at those and make a decision. The state program, that Invest in Kids program, had its own rules that were written into the legislation. We knew what that was, how that was supposed to be used. We don't know what the federal program will be used for, and that's what we're waiting rules for.
So the rules, are they out? They got to come out. If they come out and they're good for Illinois, Pritzker says he'll look at joining, and the legislature could also do that as well. Things that may be considered this legislative session as lawmakers come back next month to continue on with spring session. All right, it's Illinois in Focus Daily, each and every weekday morning here. I'm Greg Bishop. Get the headlines in your inbox at thecentersquare.com.